Now, speaking of the future, what the future will not consist of is the Jimmy Kimmel show. Oh no, it's so sad. Everybody's shedding tears for the Jimmy Kimmel show. Unless you're watching this show, in which case I would imagine you're laughing or clapping in your couch, which I would agree with. Now, I would like to dispel or debunk some of the things that the libs have been saying. If you've been on the internet at all today, which, okay, I don't want to bury the lead here. In case you don't know, Jimmy Kimmel has been pulled off ABC. He's been suspended indefinitely. I'm saying it's fired because if you're aware of how the media works, when you're suspended indefinitely, usually that means you gone. ABC is taking Jimmy Kimmel off the air, and the libs are losing their mind about it. They are saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe the censorship coming from the Trump administration. Oh, is it censorship coming from the Trump administration? What specifically did they do to censor Jimmy Kimmel? Now, the argument is being made that, well, the chair of the FCC said, hey, if you keep allowing this sort of incredibly slanted behavior on public airwaves, we may have to take a look at the licenses, which is clear and obvious. The question is, did that actually happen? Was there the FCC saying, nope, your licenses are gone, they're revoked? Because we do have a system for that, which we'll get to in a little bit. By the way, spoiler alert, the answer is no, they didn't say that. Let's check into some other reasons as to why Jimmy Kimmel may have been fired outside of the authoritarian censorship that the libs are claiming happened. Before that, let me actually set this up by playing the clip in question. Now, the clip is much longer, and some libs, the dumber ones, are making the case of, well, they're being attacked because he made a joke about President Trump. No, he didn't. Nobody thinks that. Not even the smart people on the left side of the aisle actually think that. So that argument is bunk. We won't even play the entire clip. It's just the clip that is in question as to why Jimmy Kimmel is being fired. Play clip 1.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the fingers.
Yeah, that's insane. That's an insane thing to say. With no evidence whatsoever, Jimmy is asserting effectively that the shooter, Charlie's assassin, he's a Charlie fan. And not only did he say that, he said it as if, well, everybody knows that. It's obvious, because we all know this to be true in the smug, condescending, elitist way that he often talks. Well, what are the other reasons that Disney may have decided, this is not something we want to be a part of? Well, from the peak of his ratings, he has lost between 46 and 58%. In other words, well over half of the audience he had at the peak of his show are gone. And that is consistent across all of the late night talk shows. Stephen Colbert, they said, well, Trump is trying to censor him. No, his show cost $40 million and was losing money every year. It's just a simple financial question. Jimmy Kimmel is also making $15 million a year. His contract was up in May and his ratings were down. Maybe this was just an excuse to say, this is not okay, and we're just going to get out of this before we are required to renegotiate with a show that is losing probably tens of millions of dollars per year. But also, I want to dig into the geographic public airways distributors or owners. So while the FCC, while the left is blaming the FCC, what actually happened was companies like Sinclair and Nexstar, which are broadcasting organizations that carry those public airwaves and therefore the Jimmy Kimmel show in a bunch of different places all over the country, those are the guys that were putting pressure on Jimmy Kimmel. Okay, well, why would they have done that? Well, of course, we just talked about his ratings going down, but a lot of those Sinclair and Nexstar broadcasting stations are in the middle of the country. And if you think for a second that those types of insensitive and just flat out inaccurate words from the former so-called comedian were okay with the people in the middle of the country, you're going to have to think again, because in no way, shape, or form do I think the majority of the people that are served the ABC late night show by Nexstar or Sinclair are okay with that. There's no way that those people actually think that that is okay. Nexstar and Sinclair both issued statements saying, hey, we're going to not run this show on our platforms. Only then did Disney decide, yeah, we actually do need to pull this because it turns out it's a bad business decision. Now, if the FCC said to Disney, hey, we are pulling your license because we don't like this thing that he said, honestly, I would probably be irritated at that too. And don't you think, haven't you heard enough stories of federal judge blocks the Trump administration? And don't you think that would happen in this particular instance? If the FCC said, hey, we're pulling your license, you can't be on the air because you said something that we didn't like, there is a process for that. They can easily file a lawsuit, which I'm sure they have done already in a number of other situations, and the courts would work it out whether or not the administration actually has the power to do that. But again, that didn't happen. The libs are only saying, well, that might have happened. They're alluding to that happen, which, maybe even could give cover for the business decision of ripping Jimmy off the air because nobody watched him anymore. And the affiliates in the middle part of the country thought this is the last straw. This is the line too far. This cannot continue. Bottom line here is when the FCC is saying that, hey, this is, we're going to have to take a look at this. In no way, shape, or form does that give the libs the right to say, well, specifically, this is authoritarian censorship. It's a business decision. Guy made a bad joke. Things happen. Kind of happens all the time, really. And he got fired for doing so. And to be quite honest, like we talked about earlier in the week, what he said, in my opinion, is in opposition to the societal truth that we all hold. And for that reason, bye-bye.